Hey everybody, welcome back to another video on the channel Tech with Marco. I am Marco and I'm a software developer and a DevOps engineer. And today's video is about an awesome tool, how to host it yourself, how to configure it, and its name is Authelia. In the last videos we covered how to set up your reverse proxy Traefik with some Docker services and other security measurements. And today it's time for authentication and authorization, and therefore we need to configure Authelia. So what is Authelia? Authelia is an open source software and it's a two-factor authentication and a single sign-on tool which you can add to your reverse proxy setup. And each request which is coming to your reverse proxy is then checked by Authelia, and the user which is doing the request has to authenticate itself. And with that setup we can control what users can access which services I am hosting. And now I'm showing you how to set it up and configure it for yourself. But first of all, let's cover the basic options of Authelia. So Authelia has a bunch of different methods that you can configure, but the most important ones are the two-factor authentication methods. And those can be, for example, the Google Authenticator app or any other TOTP app. Another second factor option could be, for example, a mobile push. So you might know it from the Microsoft Authenticator. When you try to log in on your Microsoft account and you have configured the Microsoft app, then the app gives you a little push and asks you, are you logging in? If yes, press yes. Or if it's not you, then deny this request. It also offers the user to reset the passwords and set a new one for themselves. You can click the forgot password link at the login page and then you will get an email if it's configured, and then the user is able to reset his own password again. It is also shipped with another security feature. For example, the user tries to log in, let's say 5 times, and after the 5th time, the user login is denied for a certain amount of time. And yeah, you can configure it, and I'll show you how. So let's have a look what proxies are actually covered by Authelia. So we have, for example, Traefik, Caddy, Envoy, Nginx, Nginx Proxy Manager, and there's another one, Swag, and HA proxy, Skipper, and the old version of Traefik. Yeah, that's all the proxies which are covered by Authelia. I only know Traefik and Nginx Proxy Manager. The others I haven't tried out. But if you want to, go ahead and yeah, let me know in the comments how that worked. But otherwise, just stick to the tutorial here. I'll show you how to set it up with Traefik. So let's have a look how the data flow is when a request is incoming. So we have the request incoming from the user at a specific URL behind a Traefik reverse proxy, and then we have Authelia configured. And Traefik is now forwarding that request to Authelia. And on Authelia, you as the user have to log in. And if you can't provide user or a password, then yeah, you can't proceed any further and can't access the actual service you want to try behind the reverse proxy. And there's also some authorization features at Authelia, which makes the administrator able to configure which service can be accessed by some specific user groups, for example. So you could imagine only admins can access some admin tools and only users can access user tools. Easy as that. And after that, Authelia is taking its decision and it is reporting that decision to Traefik. And either you can access the service, then we'll get an HTTP 200 for OK, or otherwise we'll get a HTTP 403 for access denied. So there's no option at Authelia to register yourself as a user. You have to be configured by the administrator of the systems, either directly in the database or in the configuration files, or there's a feature in Authelia which makes Authelia able to pull a certain user database from an ActiveDirectory, for example, or an LDAP server. And for that tutorial, we are using the configuration file, which is the easiest one. And then, as I said, you can also enforce for some services the second factor authentication, could be the one-time password, TOTP, or for example, if you configured it, the mobile application push. And of course, you can also add YubiKeys, for example, which are called WebAuth and WebAuth. And as I said, for the authorization, you can enforce some specific policies that only a certain user group can access specific services or specific URL. And as an advanced option, you can now use also Authelia as an identity provider with OIDC, it's called, OpenID Connect. And with the identity provider functionality, you can configure Authelia, for example, in Portainer or Grafana as the identity provider. And that means if you want to log in at Portainer and the Authelia service is configured as identity provider. Then Portainer is forwarding also the authentication to Authelia. And if the user is able to log in Authelia, then Portainer gets all the information from the user in Authelia and then decides in which group, for example, the user will be put in the Portainer groups, for example. Later in the tutorial, I will show you how that works. So let's start directly with the demo and yeah, go ahead. So first of all, let's have a look at the directories. Now we can see we have a .env file for the environment configurations. Then I have a README in the project, which is describing what I'm doing currently right now. Then we have a config directory where all the configurations for Authelia are stored in. And then, of course, we have the Docker-compose file where we have the Authelia service, the reverse proxy Traefik, and some example service like the YAML services and Portainer. So let's have a look at the files itself. So to give you an overview, we have here at first configured the Authelia service, then the Traefik proxy, then we have a whoami unsecure service for demonstration and a whoami secure service. And last but not least, we have Portainer where we configure Authelia as identity provider. So let's have a look at Authelia here. So first of all, I'm taking the Authelia Docker image. I'm giving that one here the container name Authelia for reference purposes. And I am mounting the config volume into the config path of Authelia. And then I configure Authelia with a bunch of labels, which are quite important here. So first of all, we enable Traefik. That's easy. Then the next one, we give our authentication service Authelia a domain or a subdomain, which is then auth.domain.whatever. And I want the entry point to be secure. And if you don't know what that is, I definitely recommend you to watch my first Traefik tutorial, which describes how Traefik works and what you have to set up there. But yeah, we are using the web secure entry point here. I want to use TLS and I want to use my cert resolver here, my certification resolver. And now the three labels at the bottom, they're quite important. So the first label we are declaring here is the HTTP middleware, which has the name Authelia. And it's in forward auth. And the address of the forward auth is that specific domain here. And the Authelia here refers to the container name up here. And yeah, with Docker and Docker-compose, the other Docker containers are able to resolve that Authelia here to this specific container. And the rest of the URL, this is just the path part, which is written there according to their documentations. Then we have to set in the next line the trust forward header to true. And we are also adding response headers. And these are the remote user, the remote groups, the remote name, and the remote email. So that means all this information of the users, they are reported back after the authentication request. And I am setting the environmental variable for the time zone to Europe, Berlin, depending on where you stay. This is quite important for the TOTP stuff because it's time-based. Yeah, so make sure to set that according your time zone. The next part we have here is the Traefik configuration. I'll just skip that a bit over because it's kind of the same as in my last video. Standard configuration here, nothing too special. So now let's have a first look at the whoami unsecured container. It's not very unsecure, but it's for demonstration purposes. I hope it makes it clear what I want to demonstrate here later when we have a look at the Authelia configuration. So I'm giving that also here just a bunch of labels which make the whoami service able to work with Traefik. The last one is quite important here. So we are saying the HTTP router of whoami should use a middleware. And that means whenever a request is coming to that specific container here, the request is firstly then routed through the configured middleware. And this configured middleware is Authelia at Docker. And I'm able to use that here because I configured this label up here of Authelia, which makes me able to use the Authelia at Docker middleware at every other container in my setup. And let's have a look at the whoami, which is basically the same, but later in the Authelia configuration, I'll show you what's the difference between the secure and unsecure. And as my Portainer instance here, I do not use the Authelia middleware here. So the request is then not routed from Traefik to Authelia first when you want to access Portainer, but you can access Portainer directly, but if you want to log in to your Portainer instance, then the request is routed from the Portainer container to the Authelia container. And yeah, Portainer is asking Authelia for user information. And that's the slightly difference of the forward auth method versus the identity provider method. I hope that it's a bit more clearer, but if you're not sure, just write in the comments and I try to explain it, or just use your favorite search engine. So let's have a look in the Authelia configuration directory. So we have two files in the configuration directory. The first one is the configuration.yml. So there are thousands of not thousands, but hundreds of possibilities to configure Authelia. And I think I covered the base setup quite well. So just have a look at there. We will skim through a bit and I'll explain what you have to do there. So first of all, we have the JOT secret. This is just some secret which you have to generate randomly, or you could just randomly type alphanumeric letters, I think at least 64. And yeah, the next line we have the redirection URL. This one has to match your Authelia domain. So at my showcase here, this is auth.techwithmarco.com. Then you could set your TOTP issuer. I just set that with my plain domain here, auth.techwithmarco.com. So this part is commented out here in my demonstration showcase. This is the mobile push functionality I told you about in the beginning. For that, Authelia is using a service which is called Do. I think you can register there 10 users for free, but afterwards you have to pay. So I did not configure it here, but you can check that out if you want. So now I'm setting my authentication backend to the file, which I just linked here, which is then config/users database. And yeah, as I said, you could also set some LDAP or ActiveDirectory server there, but for the ease of use, I'm sticking to the file here. So now let's come to the access control here. So I have set the default policy to deny. That makes me able to deny any request to a service which is not covered by the rules which are below there. I think it's also the default value, but it makes you more secure. So when you set up a new service in your reverse proxy network and you forget to set up some rules for that, yeah, then the user is always denied to access the service. So now let's come to the point where the difference between the unsecure who am I service and the secure who am I service is coming. And I am setting the policy to bypass the authentication methods here. So if I'm accessing unsecure.whoami.techwithmarco.com, that means the request is still going to Authelia, but Authelia knows, oh, that's a domain I don't have to check, so I'm bypassing that. So I'm giving back the request with an HTTP 200, which means okay, and the user does not see anything from Authelia and is just able to access the service. The next one is the secure.whoami.techwithmarco.com, and the policy for that is one factor. So the user only has to log in with its username and his password, and therefore he will be good. And afterwards, I have set a wildcard for my domain here with the policy two-factor. So that means if I'm accessing any other service, which is, for example, called portainer.techwithmarco.com, I have to log in with a two-factor. So that means I have to set up any authentication app or the push notification app. Yeah, so make sure to, when you configure that you set the wildcard at the last point. So because the rules are checked from the top to the bottom, and that means if you have the wildcard at the beginning and you set it to bypass or deny, then yeah, either every user is bypassed the authentication or every user is denied the authentication. So the session configuration here, they are just for how long the login is valid and after what amount of time the login is considered as inactive. So kind of easy. So at the next part, we have the regulation here. And that means we can configure the max retry of a user for his login tries. And the define time refers to how often the max retries are counted. So in my case here, it's a max retry of 3 in 120 seconds, so 2 minutes. And the ban time of the user then is set to 300 seconds. So you can put that one up, for example, then a user is banned for a longer time, but that's just for demonstration purposes here. Then we have the storage here. There we have the encryption key, and this encryption key is also just some alphanumeric random sequence here. And then we have a local storage of an SQLite database. And in this SQLite database, Authelia is storing the user sessions. So that makes Authelia able to remember which user is already logged in and is the session still valid. So then we can set up the notifier, and I've set one here to the SMTP. You could also, for testing purposes, could also just write the notifications in some text file at the storage. But when you want to be able to reset your password, you have to configure some email service here. You could use Gmail for that, or in my case, I've used SendGrid here because I wanted to try that email service anyways. So yeah, I'm using SendGrid here for demonstration purposes. Just don't try these API keys here. I destroy them after the video here. And now it's coming to the last interesting part of the configuration here. So we want to use Authelia as an identity provider, for example, Portainer. For that, we have to generate some secrets and a private key here. That HMAC secret is also generated here with a random command. And the private key here is also generated with some SSH creation command. I'll make sure to link them in my written tutorial, which you can then find on my GitHub. And after that, we have to pre-configure a client for the identity provider which we want to use. So I configured here Portainer, and we also have to generate a secret here, which is then added to the secret line here. And this is just the encryption of this random secret here. There's also an Authelia command for that. As I said, I linked them here, but you need that unencrypted password which you use, but you need that unencrypted password here to set that one in the Portainer instance to be able to use the identity providing functionality of Authelia with Portainer. And make sure to set public to false. I want to enforce a two-factor authentication at Authelia here with the authorization policies. And after the authentication request, I want the redirection happening to my Portainer URL. And yeah, you have to add some scopes here, which is then called OpenID, profile, groups, and email. Yeah, that's just what you have to configure here. I also make sure to link the Authelia documentations, but you can just Google them up. So let's have a look at the users database. So I hope that wasn't too long. So at the users database file, we have our users configured here under the users keyword. I have two users for demonstration here configured. One is with the username Marco, and one has the username tag with Marco. And what's the difference? They have just other groups configured. So you don't have to do that. You could also leave groups out or make them empty, or yeah, just up to you what you want to use or how you want to set up your authentications with different services. So this is up to you. So after a lot of blah, blah, blah and configuration explaining, let's have a look how that looks in a real life example. So I'm using a server which has Ubuntu and Docker-compose installed. I am copying the files from my local machine to my remote machine with SCP. So after I uploaded everything there, I am accessing the instance, and let's have a look in the Authelia directory which I just created. We see we have everything needed there except for the Let's Encrypt folder. That was just for my testing purposes. Don't worry, that won't be there at your instance, but after you started the first time your Docker-compose setup, it will be there. So let's just start everything here. Docker-compose up -d. Yeah, then let's check first of all the Traefik dashboard where you can check if everything is up and running. Therefore, I'm using my favorite browser, which is called Arc. I made a video about it. Check it out. Make sure to check it out. So I want to access traefik.techwithmarco.com, and it is asking me for some basic authentication, which I just configured at the Traefik. And we can see that we have some services or HTTP routers up and running. So we can see that we have auth.techwithmarco online, Portainer.techwithmarco is online, Traefik.techwithmarco is online, unsecure whoami.techwithmarco is online, and the secure whoami.techwithmarco is online. So let's check the auth.techwithmarco instance. I'm opening a new tab and opening the auth.techwithmarco. So that is how Authelia looks. So now we can see that I'll be asked for a username and a password. I'm not logging in currently right now because I want to demonstrate how the unsecure whoami works. So let's go back and copy the link of the unsecure whoami.techwithmarco, opening a new tab, and I am accessing the unsecure.whoami.techwithmarco.com. And you can see I wasn't asked any authentication. So easy as that, the bypass did work. Now I changed the URL to secure.whoami.techwithmarco.com, and I would expect that Authelia now wants to log me in with my username and password. And see, I'm not able to access the page itself, so I have to first log in, and I am doing that with my Marco account here, and easy as that, it works. So let's check out Authelia. So I'm already logged in with my username Marco, and I can set up a one-time password method, adding the timed-based one-time password here for the ease of use. And I have to click that. Oh yeah, I'm already here at the one-time password, so I have to click register device. And yeah, now you can see there was a pop-up at the top right, an email has been sent to your address. And as I set up the SMTP configurations, and now let me check my emails. Oh yeah, so as you can see, I've got a new email to hello.techwithmarco.com. And now you could, I don't know where's my smartphone, but now you have to use or take your smartphone and scan this QR code. And I've set up my TOTP method here. So let's log out first, and let's log into our Portainer instance. So admin, create user. I definitely do not recommend to use admin at your Portainer instance, but after we are logged in at Portainer, we can see that we have one stack running, and that one is the Authelia stack. And in that Authelia stack, we have our YAML services, the Portainer service, and Traefik. So to now make use of the identity provider behavior, we have to go into the Portainer settings and to the authentication tab. And now we want to switch the authentication method here from internal to the OAuth authentication. And what I definitely recommend you to do is the automatic user provisioning to enable that, because otherwise you have to create the user in Portainer first. Only after that they will be able to log in with the single sign-on method. And now we have to configure some things. So the client ID refers to the ID which we set in the configuration file. That one is Portainer. The client secret is the unencrypted secret, which is here in line 129 at the end. So I do copy this one here, add that in the client secret. The authorization URL is the URL of the Authelia service. In my case, it is here auth.techwithmarco.com. Then the specific path here at the end with authorization. The same goes to the access token URL, only with the ending token. And the resource URL is the user info. And the redirect URL is the Portainer URL. We don't have to set the logout URL. And the ID is the preferred username. So this one matches with the username of the one configured in Authelia. And we set the scopes to OpenID, profile, groups, and email. And now, yes, we can save the settings now. And I am logging out. Here is the admin. Log out. Now we get a button which is called Login with OAuth. And if we press that button, we will be redirected to Authelia. And I will do that here now. So as you can see, I am still asked to log into Authelia. And I am logging in here. And now, because I configured that I need a one-time password, I have to enter my one-time password here. And this one I copied, entered that one here. Check, everything works. Now I have to accept that consent request that Authelia is sharing my information of my identity with the Portainer service. I can either deny that, but then I'm not able to log in. And yeah, let's just click accept. And now you can see that I will be logged into Portainer. So as you can see up here in the top right, I'm logged in with my Marco account. But I do not have any environments available in this account here. I'm not an expert in Portainer configurations here because I don't use it. That was just for demonstrating how the identity providing works with Authelia. So yeah, two nice options, the forwarding our authentication and the identity providing authentication methods. Yeah, so let's close the demonstration here. And I hope you guys enjoyed how Authelia works. And yeah, let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Just reach out to me. I'll comment and reach out back to you. I hope you found it interesting, and yeah, I'll be happy if you give that video a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel because I'm still quite new, and I hope to provide more tutorials in the future for you. If you have any wishes, just let me know. Thanks for that, and yeah, have a good one. See you in the next video. Bye bye.